There we go.
OK, bon après-midi tout le monde. Je suis Pamela Eastfeld, the Présidente de La Paz, and I'm very happy to welcome you to PAFSO's annual general meeting for 2022. I would like to acknowledge that I am chairing this meeting from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, and I acknowledge them as the past, present, and future guardians and caretakers of these lands. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda, which is on the slide in front of you, and which you've had a chance to see in your packages. Marty, did you have a chance to put the link to the documents in the chat, just in case?
It should be there.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just can't see it on my screen. Okay. Is there somebody who is willing to, or is there anyone who objects to the agenda or wants to make any kind of an amendment? I'm not seeing anyone. Okay, so if there are no amendments and it doesn't look like any objections, is somebody willing to move that we adopt the agenda?
It's Allison, I can move.
Okay, I see Allison moved, and somebody else willing to second?
I see Kale put his move in the chat, so maybe he could second.
Okay, sorry, Kale. So we'll have you second. So maybe I'll just do it this way. Is there any objections to the agenda? I'm just looking at the list and I am not seeing anyone. So, okay, so the agenda is adopted. So we will go ahead on this basis. So could I have the next slide? So I just want to present to you our new executive committee. We had a full slate of acclaimed members this time. And so I'd like to welcome new members, Kristen Jansen and Naomi Gilker for FPDS and Trade Streams respectively, and returning members Madeline Johnson and CJ Scott from the same streams. And I would like to thank Suhaila El-Katab and Michael Eystone, who are not coming back after several years of long service. Corinne Girard, Alison Poff, William Dunlop, Sarah Finnell, Iris Louis, Logan McNamara, Tam Ames, John Gossel, Tanya Below, and Mary Claude Harvey are entering the second year of their terms. And you'll notice, for those of you who've been around for a while, that that's only 14 names. That's because even though I'm a member of the XCOM still, I am in a slightly different category since I formally began the first year of my 3-year term as your directly elected president on the 31st of August. So from now on, according to the amendments in the Constitution that were passed last year, you have a 14-member XCOM with 2 members from each stream and 4 members at large, plus the president, who doesn't count as a member of any stream. So I would like to thank everybody for their service so far. We're going to miss Suhaila and Michael, but we're very happy to have Kristen and Naomi with us and to continue to have the others who have been working very hard on your behalf. So thank you, everyone, and we can go on to the next slide. So you've all had in your packages the minutes of the last annual general meeting, which took place last October. We have not received any comments or adjustments to the minutes, so I am assuming that they are fine with everyone. And if anyone has any amendments that they would like to make to the record of last year's meeting, please raise your hands and speak now. I'm not seeing any. So I will ask, if there are no amendments, is there someone who is willing to move that we adopt the minutes of the last AGM? And I'm sorry, I can't seem to see the chat. So so Madeline moves, and then there is a hand somewhere in the list of participants. Marcy Lynn, willing to second, and So I guess I'll do the same thing again. Marcy Lynn, I'm just going to take your hand down just so that I'm not counting you as a no by accident. But is there anyone who has any objection to the minutes of the last AGM? I'm not seeing any. So the minutes of the last AGM are carried. So thank you very much. So Marty, could I have the next slide? So President's report, and you'll see me, I'm going to put a timer on my watch so I don't yammer on for too long on this. But yes, I mean, you've been receiving my regular updates roughly every couple of weeks on the activities of PAFSO and on the activities of me as your president. COVID-19 has continued to dominate our work. And although things are starting to normalize, we are kind of getting into some kind of a rhythm that counts as, I guess, a new normal or at least a familiar abnormal. There is always the possibility of another wave and a return of restrictions. So we're continuing to engage through the National Joint Council Task Force. They're now monthly meetings, roughly. In the last year, we've had more than 25 of those meetings, plus a number of meetings with the departments, GAC and IRCC, as well as separately with TBS on individual and particular issues. Our advocacy work is continuing. A main focus, important aspect has been occupational health and safety standards, especially as we look at the return to the workplace in Canada, and know that for many of you who are abroad, you've been back in full force in the workplace for quite some time. But we are doing our best to ensure that when that return happens, that it's done in the context of, the best possible health and safety measures. And we're pressing the employer to make sure that they are complying with those measures, including things like enhanced ventilation and CO2 monitoring and so on in the workplace that will allow them to monitor in real time what the situation is and make sure that your workplaces are as safe as they can be. We also know that there are continued difficulties with relocation. Some of those are linked to COVID, and some of those are frankly linked to long-standing problems that have been out there for a while. So we are working on those, and Bert will talk a little bit more in his presentation about the upcoming review of the Foreign Service directives, which has emerged as a real pain point. We're also working, the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee has been working on a study of the Foreign Service and the administration of the Foreign Service. So we've been participating in that. I was the first speaker at that opened the study, and we will have an opportunity to return again. I'm in the process right now of preparing a written submission in advance of our return that will deal with some of the issues and respond to some of the comments that have come up. But it's been a very interesting process. And we've also been participating in the GAC process and their consultation with bargaining agents on their own study in parallel to or maybe in response to the Senate study. So all of these are opportunities for us to get our oar in there and make sure that they're aware of the issues and the concerns of the FS group. As I said, we're also looking at the implementation of hybrid models, which seem to be the new norm for things, and what the standards and procedures are going to be for those. I mentioned the testimony before the Senate committee. When we're just tomorrow going to start the first round of our collective bargaining negotiations with Treasury Board, and XCOM just gave the bargaining committee a formal mandate on Thursday. Understandably, the economic impact of and the lessons learned during COVID will be addressing the lessons learned during COVID will be some of our priorities in this next round. Economic impact first and foremost, because where our dollar is, our pay is worth a little bit less every day, and we can't let that go on for too long. As I mentioned, we're also looking at the FSDs, and we've just formed a committee, a consultative committee with members who volunteered to be part of this consultation group and help us get our survey ready to do a broader survey of the membership. Bert will talk about this a little bit more in his presentation. Next slide. Oh, Marty, oh, there we are. So some of you might notice that, you know, for the first time in some time, in several of these meetings, I'm not bringing to you some kind of governance related initiative or other structural or constitutional amendment or any of those kinds of things. And that's because we, with the establishment of the presidency as a permanent part of our governance structure, we've finished largely that part of our work. With the departure of Kim Coles and the establishment of Bert's position as general manager, that's the other part of aligning our governance structure with the new presidency and the changes that we've made. As her last project before she left, Kim did an evaluation of our programs. So one of the first tasks of the new executive committee starting in November is going to be to look at, in cooperation with Bert, those conclusions and start to figure out what we need to do. And one of the key elements in all of this is our advocacy and strategic engagement pillar of our strategic plan. Which recommended that we become more active on that file, and in accordance with that, we commissioned a evaluation of our advocacy resources and programming. I'll talk a little bit more about that next. And we will also be looking in the new year with the new executive committee on developing risk management strategy and an evaluation of PASO's risk profile in a number of areas. These are other governance things that are still on our to-do list related to the strategic plan. Can I have the next slide, please? So when I talk about the future, I mean, I came across this quote by Desmond Tutu. There comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. And if I could have the next slide, please. I mean, we have been doing a very good job of pulling people out of the river. We have a great team of labor relations advisors. We have done pretty well, I think, in our crisis management of the COVID-19 situation and various other things. But we keep running across some of the same issues. And our focus, my focus over the next year is going to be on taking that trip upstream and figuring out how we make sure that we get what we need and that our members get the respect and support they need in their careers. And one of the conclusions that I'm coming to is that we really need to invest time, energy, and resources in building political and public support for the Foreign Service. Navigator, the company that we hired to do the evaluation of our advocacy strategy, recommended that we increase that capacity in advocacy and stakeholder relations. So can I have the next slide, Marty? Oh, sorry. So you'll see in the budget when Allison speaks about this, and Bert will talk about this as well. We are asking, we've increased our salary budget slightly because we want to hire an advocacy and stakeholder relations officer. And part of that person's function will be to help us develop that concrete strategy that will really move us forward and make sure that we are able to get the respect and the attention that we deserve for your issues. We, I think, have been hoping for some years that things might change and that our management and other, our ministers may recognize us and see our value with us just doing good work. But I think that now we have to admit that it's time to go after this in a more concrete way. So that's my plan for the next year. And I'm about to turn over the podium here to Bert, but if you have questions, oh, sorry, that's the wrong slide. Don't send your questions by email because we're not looking at it. Please put your questions in the chat and Marty will let us know what they are when Bert and I have finished talking. So over to you, Bert.
Thank you, Pam. I hope everybody can hear me okay out there. Um, it is a pleasure to meet all of you today, given that this is my first presentation as your new general manager. Uh, as Pam mentioned, I'm known as Bert. My real name is Bertrand Mir. That's my real name, but everybody knows me as Bert. If my name sounds familiar for some of you, it's because I've been with PASO for the last 3 years, working as a labor relation advisor. So upon getting the position of GM, I was quite familiar with the organization and also the team. So just in terms of my presentation, there's some key important points that you need to consider. Uh, Unfortunately, in June of 2022, Kim Coles, our former executive director, announced that she was leaving PAFSO. So as Pam mentioned, as part of the strategic review, the XCOM decided to review the management structure of the organization based on the creation of the full-time position of president, which was adopted at last year's AGM. With business continuity in mind, the executive director position was morphed into a new general manager position. Um, Now, the new GM position will continue to manage PAFSO's secretariat while being more in line with the new full-time presidency role in the organization. So on August 2nd, 2022, I took over the role of new GM. Next slide, please, Marty. Now, obviously, as Pam mentioned, due to COVID, our operations continues to be virtual, and the majority of our team works remotely. Uh, Jake Bizana, who is a well-seasoned labor relation expert with more than 30 years of experience in the field, was hired to temporarily fill out the LRA position left vacant from my appointment as GM. You have also noticed that Marty Johnstone, who has been keeping track of our membership database for almost 2 years, was appointed permanently on August 24th, 2022. Jeff Beard, who was also part of our team as the finance officer, was also made permanent on August 24, 2022. Now, these steps were taken to fill out one of my priority in the organization, which was to consolidate the secretariat. I think it's important, if we want to move forward and provide the best possible service to our membership, that we secure, some of the human resources that we have in place. So that was essentially my first step, or the initial step that I took upon my appointment as GM. Now, as Pam mentioned, in this year's budget, there are funds that were set aside to hire 2 additional staff resources to ensure that our business service delivery model is fulfilled. So, a newly created advocacy and stakeholder relations officer position has been created to work with the president and the executive committee and support the secretariat's role in policy development and also, obviously, advocacy duties. Uh, in addition, labor relation advisor will also be hired to help us meet with the increasing needs or demands in terms of our representational services. I won't lie to you, COVID had a significant impact on some of our members' challenges and some of our members' issues at work. So the extra LRA will certainly help us to deal with some of the increasing workload issues that we are currently facing. We expect that we'll be able to, you know, hire the additional resources within between now and the holiday season. Next slide, Marty. Now, on bout de papier, 2022 saw PAFSO's flagship magazine, Bout de Papier, keep steady on course that was set in 2021 after a hiatus and a deep restructuring. Now, under the leadership of editor-in-chief Lillian Thompson's, Boo editorial board underwent a bit of rejuvenation as it brought on board many new and fresh faces. Two issues were published in 2022, which is volume 32, which was published in March, and volume, it's 22.2, which is in September. Now, I know most of you have not received a copy of Boo yet. Unfortunately, we're having a small issue with the distribution of Bout de Papier. But you should be getting a copy of the latest edition within a month or so. Though still short of the stated goal of 3 issues per year, we think that better planning, increased board participations, and the inclusion of outside contributors from, for example, university students, will likely, significantly increase the momentum behind the publication. And I'm pretty sure that in 2023, we will be able to meet our target, which is to have 3 issues per year. Next slide, Marty. Au niveau des prix de la page, pour une 3e année consécutive, le gala annuel des prix de la page n'a pas eu lieu en raison de la pandémie. Tout comme l'an dernier, nous avons produit une vidéo commémorant virtuellement les lauréats, ce qui semble avoir été bien reçu par l'ensemble des membres. Au cours de l'hiver, le comité des prix de la PAS a reçu plusieurs excellentes candidatures. Au final, 4 candidats se sont mérités un prix pour leur dévouement et leur excellente contribution à titre d'agent du service extérieur. Next slide, Marty. Au niveau des communications, nous continuons nos efforts de communiquer autant que possible directement avec les membres. Suivant notre modèle de communication stratégique, notre agent de communication travaille étroitement avec la présidente, Pam, afin de produire des messages aux membres à raison d'une fois aux 2 semaines. Les messages de la présidente visent à fournir de l'information complète et à jour sur différents sujets d'intérêt reliés à vos conditions d'emploi ou les enjeux touchant la communauté des FS. Et selon nos données statistiques, il semble que les messages de la présidente sont lus et vus par plusieurs d'entre vous. Les messages de la présidente sont en fait distribués à tous les vendredis de la 1e et de la 3e semaine de chaque mois. Donc, si vous n'avez pas reçu les messages de la présidente, c'est possiblement parce que vous n'êtes pas inscrit. Essentiellement, je pourrais vous inviter à vous inscrire afin de recevoir les messages et vous tenir au courant et à jour là, de certains sujets auxquels nous faisons face là, sur une base assez régulière. Next slide, Marty. Thank you. In terms of labor relation, in 2022, we have seen another significant increase in the number of members that is reaching out to us for guidance and advice on various labor relation or FSD issues. and this is mostly as a result of the pandemic. For many working outside the NCR region, the employer's restrictive interpretation of the relocation directive and also the expense related to alternate relocation routing were of particular concern. I would say the last 2 months have been this has been an ongoing issue, one that our subject matter expert on FSD, Paul Raven, is closely looking into and helping members dealing with their issues. We also had several members reaching out to us um, with concerns about having received notice that audits of their FSD records from 2014 and earlier had revealed discrepancies, which now requires a repayment. Uh, Now, for those of you who are not aware, PAFSO has instituted a grievance process based on the Crown Liability and Proceeding Act, which essentially limits the collection or recovery of overpayment that predates 6 years. So there's a 6 year statute of limitation to what the employer can recover in terms of overpayment. And right now, we're dealing with several cases for which members are being asked to reimburse overpayments that dates back more than 6 years. So we're strongly looking into those, and we're taking a common approach to try and resolve the matter. Next slide, Marty. Now, looking ahead for 2022, 2023, sorry, as Pam mentioned, this is going to be an important year for PAFSO. As some of you may know, we had filed notice to bargain in March of 2022. The bargaining proposal have been exchanged between PAFSO and the employer, and both parties are set up to meet for an initial 3-day round starting tomorrow, in fact. So tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday will be at the bargaining table. As Pam mentioned, economic increase will be the focus of this round as we are facing a real inflation crisis in Canada and abroad. So this is something that obviously will be discussed at the bargaining table. Unfortunately, for those of you who may ask, we have not submitted any proposal in terms of economic increases so far. So this is something that will happen later on in the bargaining process. We expect that a new collective agreement will probably be reached with Treasury Board sometime, if we're lucky, in 2023. Our hopes is that the employer will recognize and appreciate your hard work, dedication, and sacrifices you have all made in the past few years, especially with the pandemic. So we are keeping our fingers crossed that we will be able to get some sort of settlement sometime in 2023. Next slide, Marty. Now, also, regarder de l'avant pour 2023, la révision cyclique des directives sur le service extérieur. La prochaine révision cyclique des directives vient de commencer. Certains d'entre vous ont probablement reçu un courriel de la part de l'employeur. La PAS, comme Pam l'a mentionné, la PAS a créé un comité interne visant à recueillir les propositions de nos membres qui serviront de base pour soumettre nos propositions à la table du Conseil national mixte. Donc, à l'heure actuelle, si vous avez des propositions pour lesquelles vous voulez soumettre à la PAS, nous vous invitons de nous les soumettre en utilisant là, notre adresse courriel générique qui est info@pafso.com. Donc, vous pouvez nous faire part de vos propositions, vos suggestions pour qu'on puisse les soumettre ou les considérer pour les soumettre à la table de négociation. Nous avons déjà reçu plusieurs propositions de la part des membres qui sont regroupées et priorisées. Nous prévoyons que les membres du Conseil national mixte sur les directives débuteront le processus d'échange et de négociation à la fin du mois de janvier. Donc, pour être en mesure de rencontrer l'échéancier établi, nous vous demandons de nous soumettre là, vos propositions le plus rapidement possible pour qu'on puisse avoir la chance de les regarder et les soumettre ou les inclure là, dans notre soumission qu'on va soumettre au Conseil national mixte. Si tout va bien et qu'il n'y a pas d'impasse au comité, les changements aux directives verront probablement le jour en avril 2023. C'est l'échéancier qui est établi là par le Conseil national mixte. Next slide, Marty. So in conclusion, finally, as PAFSO new general manager, I'm always committed to ensure that your rights are upheld and protected. Each member of the PAFSO Secretariat team is here for you to advocate on your behalf, to highlight the crucial role that foreign service officers play in the service of Canada and all Canadians at home and abroad. I certainly feel privileged to work with a team that is dedicated to look after our members, their interests from both an individual and a collective standpoint. And I'm very pleased to have started this new role, and I look forward to what we can achieve in 2023. Just to let you know, my priority is always the service that we provide to our members. That's our raison d'être. And for me, that is my number one priority and is also my team's number one priority. So with that, thank you all and have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Bert. I realize I didn't, I should have given you a bigger introduction there, because I realized we did our PAFSO breakfast on Tuesday, a week ago, and we had a discussion with a number of members who showed up and covered a whole bunch of interesting issues, including the background that led you to this job, whether the path that either led you to this good end or this bad end, when depending on how you feel in the moment. So if anyone has a chance, please go and check out our YouTube channel and have a listen to this. It was a useful and interesting discussion that got a little bit more into some of the details of some of these things than we can really get into, in a formal thing like the AGM. But suffice it to say, I mean, there was a stiff competition for the general manager position, and we were really happy that Bert decided that he was willing to take this on, and he beat a number of other very good candidates, hands down, in the competition. And so far, we've been really happy with the way, and I'm sure we will continue to be very happy with the way things are going, because he's got that good balance between understanding us and keeping us on the straight and narrow, keeping me on the straight and narrow. So I think this is really what we need. I thought I saw a hand at some point in the list of participants that there was a question, but
it was yep.
So Paul Joseph, did you want to speak? Can we let
I had a question, unless you want to leave it to the end of the presentation, whatever's easiest for you.
No, go ahead. So this is, we're going to take questions now on what Bert and I were just talking about, and then we'll move on to the discussion of the treasurer and the budget. So go ahead now.
Thank you. So my question is about collective bargaining. I want to know if it's true that the executive committee has already ruled out a strike as a negotiation tactic in favor of negotiation arbitration process, and if so, why?
You want me to
Yeah,
chime in here,
you
Pat?
could take that one, Bert, if you want. Yeah.
Okay, it's a little bit more complicated than the executive director's decision. What's important to understand is, legally speaking, from a legislative standpoint, The bargaining agent, when they serve notice to bargain, they have to identify which recourse process they will enter in case of a dispute at the bargaining table. Okay, so there's two choices: either you choose conciliation, strike, recourse, or you choose mediation and arbitration, right? Which is the proper word, arbitration route. Those are the two options. And traditionally speaking, at PAFSO, we've always, well, for several years now, we have chosen the path of arbitration. So this was done in consultation with the membership. So it's not the executive director that made that call or that decision. It's the membership who decided that in this round, arbitration was the recourse to use in case there's an impasse at the bargaining table.
And maybe I could just add, normally, what you do is if you have big structural issues, like we did back in when we did the big strike in 2014, we had major disparities between our pay and the similar pay for other policy type, related groups. That's when you go for a strike. Right, that's when you go for the strike, the what do we call it? Strike.
Conciliation
Conciliation
/ strike.
strike, yes.
Yeah.
Conciliation strike option, because you need that heavy weapon of being able to withdraw service, right? Whereas if you're in more of a sort of like you've got the framework that you really want, which now I think more or less we do. I mean, we are the highest paid policy group in government, except for people who have a what do they call it? Like a professional designation, like doctors and lawyers and so on. So we're doing well monetarily, and we don't really need that big restructuring. What we need is certain, specific things related to our conditions of service, and as well as, an increase that will keep up with inflation, so we don't lose the standing and the salary that we're getting. So for us as a small group, I mean, I don't know if you were here in 2014, but that was successful, but that took a lot out of us. It was hard. And there were people in particular, our immigration colleagues who were on withdrawal of service for like months and months on end, who had to delay their retirement by significant lengths of time, because we replace the salary, but your time on strike does not count towards your service and can't be brought back. Like, going on strike, it's a serious thing. And our general orientation in this kind of a thing is that, there's still stuff we can do, right? There's still, we can still do things like, information campaigns. We can still remind everybody to follow all of the rules. I mean, you can't do work to rule because that's considered a strike action, but you can certainly remind everybody like, hey, work your contract. So we decided that it just makes more sense. And also, because we are a small group, and for better for worse, sometimes you have this this idea that, well, people are elite, think of themselves as an elite, and they already get all kinds of good stuff, and they're already the best paid policy group in government. In some ways, it's better for us to get in front of an arbitrator who is going to be able, it's like the difference between choosing a jury trial and a judge trial, right? Sometimes it's going to be better for us to get in front of a professional labor person who will take into account a whole range of objective things, rather than taking it to a strike, which is effectively going to almost the court of public opinion on, what should happen to these folks. Now, personally, I have to admit, when I saw what was going on with inflation, and when I saw, how everything was climbing through the roof this last few months, I have to admit I had a couple of moments when I was sort of lying awake at night and thinking like, ooh, if we had known that that was going to happen, would we have chosen a different option?
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Because no arbitrator is going to say, oh, look, inflation is between 7 and 8%. Here's a 7 or 8% raise. They're going to say, here's a 2%, here's a 3%, not even, especially since other bargaining agents in the federal government, that's what they're getting now. So like, to me, it's, we've already like kind of resigned our fate to getting a bad raise.
Not necessarily, right? Because those arbitrators are also going to have to take into account the awards that are given to people who have gone the strike route. So like if PSAC, which is doing the conciliation strike thing, if they get a sizable increase, that will be taken into consideration by an arbitrator. So I think, you know, I think we're on the right track. I mean, we can't, you know, we can't go back. We can't change the past, but I do think I think we're still on the right track. And I think, you know, one of the other big risks for a small union like us is to be made an example of, you know, oh, let's show this group of 2,000 people, you know, that we're not going to budge, you know, pour encourager les autres. And I don't want to see us in that position either. So this is a safer strategy, I think. Britt, go ahead.
No, and I didn't want to interrupt you, Pam, here, but I mean, there is one consideration that needs to be well thought about. And this is, we're dealing with an employer who's both the employer and the legislator, right? And it's never an easy situation. And we've all seen this before, right? Where the government allows people to go on strike for a week and then they legislate them back to the, you know, to work and impose their next terms and conditions of employment. And that's also a reality that we need to think of, right? So although conciliation strike might be, you know, the mechanism that has more weight, it's always a tricky one because we're dealing with an employer who's also a legislator and who can basically legislate our terms and conditions of employment and have people return back to work after a week of being on strike. So this is the reality here.
Yeah. Okay, so
thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'm not seeing any other hands, or I'm sorry, I can't seem to see the chat. I don't know what I have done. I'm on my Mac and the chat's not visible. Are there any, Marty, could you scan the chat and let me know, is there anything that we need to answer from the chat?
Nope. Last thing I
Nope.
see is unless someone raises their hand, like Michael.
Oh, okay, Michael, go ahead. One last question before we go on to the treasurer report, and then anyone else, if you have other questions, there'll be an opportunity at the end if you think of anything else. So, Michael, go ahead.
So I was just going to comment. I don't see chat. I think I thought it was disabled for this call. I'll just say that I think that the decision to go with the arbitration, you know, the arbitrators are actually generally pretty fair about these things, and they do recognize the inflation environment. So I mean, I think that was the right decision. But I really just wanted to say, when you asked about the chat, it's like I've been looking for the chat, but I don't know if it's disabled. And I just wanted, while I'm speaking, offer my appreciation for all the great work you've done over the last little while, and to offer my support for the board and all the dedicated team in the Secretariat, because everyone's done a great job.
Thank you. And we're going to miss you as well. I mean, but we know where you live. So, I mean, one of the things I've been happy about with the last little while is we are seeing more people coming forward, you know, to be on different committees and to do different things, even if they're not on XCOM. So, you know, we will be hunting you down and hunting down your colleagues who are taking an interest in things and putting you all to work. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so if it's okay, if there's no hot pursuit, I will go on to the next item. Marty, could you change the slide? So this is la rapport du trésorier, or no, you should de la trésor. I don't know how to say that in French. Allison, it's your turn to talk to us about the money.
Hello, everyone. I am not going to turn my camera on because I'm under the weather, so it's not a good look right now. So very briefly, as you can see from the 2021 audit, we remain in excellent shape financially, and we are working closely with our investment partner to maximize returns to ensure that we are getting the most for our members. Nous continuerons d'être prudents dans nos estimations concernant les cotisations perçues auprès de nos membres en raison du retard continu dans le processus d'intégration des personnes à notre syndicat lorsqu'elles se joignent à la filière FS, que ce soit dans un poste intérimaire ou dans le cadre d'un concours. We will continue to press both of the ministers' offices and the ministries themselves to give us a clear picture of the number of people we have in our union. So again, this is kind of, we're still a little bit stuck in the Phoenix world in getting a clear picture of how many people actually belong in the FS stream. For the 2023 budget, members will notice an increase in the wage and benefits line, as both Pam and Bert mentioned. This increase will allow us to hire an additional resource, an advocacy and stakeholder relations officer, and this position will allow the union to develop clear strategies and undertake outreach in key populations that impact our members' work. Votre comité exécutif demeure déterminé à investir dans la réserve pour moyens de pression de travail et nos autres investissements. Chaque année, nous transférons des fonds dans ces domaines pour assurer une croissance saine. So you will see over the past few years, our investments have continued to grow at a healthy rate, and we remain committed to that. So at the end of each year, when we get a surprising amount from the membership dues, we look at investing that to ensure we're still getting excellent return for our members and that we're in healthy shape financially. So if anybody has any questions in the budget, please let me know. Otherwise, I would ask you to take a look at the 2023 budget that was proposed. And unless there are objectives, I'd like to move to adopt that budget.
Thanks, Allison. I'm not seeing any hands or any comments. Oh, Kale, is that a question or is that a seconding Allison's motion or both? You go ahead, whatever it is.
It was actually a question. Looking at the audited statements from 2021, I mean, one editorial comment, which was whoever's clever plan it was to put it into provincial bonds rather than equities. Thank you, because they're probably doing a lot better right now. But also just, I mean, we did end up pulling in quite a lot of a surplus, operating surplus that year. Did that ended up just going into general reserve or contingency fund, or I guess there's a bit of a difference between the close in 2021 versus here. It was nearly $1 million, if I'm not mistaken. So just curious where that ended up going.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mix. We do like to keep some cash on hand, obviously, in case there's any unexpected events that pop up. But a lot of our surplus each year we invest. So we do a portion of it into the job action fund because of our commitment to the members to keep that at a healthy level. And we also had a commitment to our members to get it to a certain state. So we have agreed as the executive committee that we will put in a certain minimum each year from the budget, and then we will revisit that at the end of the financial year when we have a better idea of our operating expenditures. As I've stated a couple of times, we don't have a clear picture of our members and our membership fees. Just so the group is aware, at one point, Global Affairs reached out to PAFSO to say, how many members do you have? Not giving me a lot of faith in the numbers we get. I know anecdotally people who've come over from a competition or an acting and they still don't show up on our books, and it's been over a year. So this is a source of frustration. For those of you who are with the department back in 2009, 2010, I don't remember if you recall the exercise where we all had to go to our managers and declare our classification and what our salary step was because nobody had an idea what it was, and that was department wide. So again, we're pushing the departments to give us this picture because it's very hard to budget on an estimate. So our estimates are very conservative and based on the previous years, and our commitment to the membership is that the end of the year, we look at what's left over and we put that into the investments to make sure we're getting a healthy return and that we're able to explain this to the members and show that we are doing the best for your dollar and that we will continue to be in good operating shape in the years to come.
And I think just to be specific, I think that what we decided last year was that 2/3 of the surplus went into the job action fund, because that needs to get to a certain level to pay for, I think we decided it's 2 weeks full time of everybody's withdrawal of service. And then the rest went into the general reserve and investments so that it's available, in case we need something or for a capital project. Now I'm wondering, just looking at my own investment statements for the last quarter, I wonder if we get a snapshot right now, if our investment picture looks as good as it did, a couple months ago. But like everything, it's up and down. So, we're being conservative. I think we're budgeting on, what was it, about 1,800 members, and really we know we actually have closer to 2,000. But we want to make sure, that we are not going above what for sure we know we have, because of these problems with the departments in giving us the accurate records. So I think we're in pretty good shape. And we're also looking at things to keep track. I mean, we don't want to be hoarding people's money and not doing anything with it. And once we get to where the reserve is at where it should be, then we're gonna look at what happens next. Paul, go ahead. I see your hand.
Yes, just comparing 2021 to 2023 budget, the executive committee expenses from 33,000 to 110,000. What are those expenses exactly?
So if I can just jump in, so we did see the expenses for the executive committee drop sharply during the pandemic because we were not doing the in-person meetings, nor were we doing any of the outreach. So part of this is now we are starting to revamp the outreach and doing more in-person things, hosting events. And some of that is also, I believe that was some of the training for the executive committee that we did last year that we hadn't done in previous years. So there was an increase in cost, which will look jarring on paper, but please remember, March 2020, everything slammed shut, including our ability as an executive committee to meet. And we've had to do some investments, for example, the online forum to bring us up to speed. And again, some of the other expenses related to that and doing some online training, as well as now we're seeing more expenses, particularly in the outreach area.
And so is that where travel's going to go then? Is that
Yeah.
what you mean, like in-person
Yeah,
in-person outreach?
Yeah, that's where travel and that's in outreach, I believe.
Okay, because
Yeah,
the executive
outreach and
training has its own line item, 20,000.
Yeah.
So, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Comments, questions? I'm not seeing any. Okay, so Allison has moved to adopt the budget. Is anybody willing to second? I can second, I guess. Oh, I see John seconds. Okay. Or John, is that I'm assuming that's second if you want to talk, undo your bite, but he's seconding. Okay. So maybe what I should do, I just want to make sure that we get everyone on this. So maybe I'll do this one the different way. I'll say all in favor of adopting the budget, please raise your hand. And then I'll ask Marty to count.
I don't know how to do that. I think you should have said if you complain.
I think it's under more actions. So for people who can't see the chat or raise your hand option, if you click on the 3 little dots, you'll see the options there.
It's not in mine. I only have show background. Anyway, I'm in favor.
Okay, so Marty, count the hands plus Tam.
And we'll do the audited statements afterwards. Is that correct, or?
Oh, sorry, you're right. We do need to adopt the audited statements.
Apologies, I skipped over that one.
Yeah, okay. We'll do the audited statements next.
Okay. I have 28 people so far at the highest amount.
Okay. So I think that's
more
a
than half.
majority. That's more than half. So I think we can say that the budget is carried. So thank you, everyone. And now, Allison, do you want to move to adopt the audited statements?
Yes, apologies, I'm doing this out of order, but I would move for the adoption of the audited 2021 financial statement.
And I can second that, Kale.
Kale seconds.
Thank you.
Okay. So maybe just to make things easier, or is it making it harder? I will ask if there are any objections to adopting the audited statements. So put your hand down if you don't like if you don't want to vote against adopting the statements. I'm seeing the numbers going down. We're down to 2, 1. Oh, okay, nobody. So the audited statements are carried. So thank you very much. Any
Thank you,
other
everyone.
Thanks, Allison. And anybody, any final comments or anything on the treasurer's report before I move on to the next part of the agenda? Not seeing anything. Merci beaucoup. Marty, can we have the next slide? Okay, so you guys have had the report on the insurance committee, des assurances collectives, and Marty, I'm hoping that you'll be able to answer any questions on that one. Rapport du comité professionnel, which is all about the breakfasts and the tradecraft stuff that we've been having. I don't think there were no others. So does anybody have any questions on either of those reports? I'm not seeing any. So, okay. So, je vais donner la parole à William Dunlop pour parler sur notre projet de mentorat autochtone. William, are you here? You ready to talk?
Yes, I'm here. I was busy reading the report on the insurance and wasn't able to get back to here, but I'm here now. So yes, I'd be happy to talk about what we're doing in that area. Just let me get my speaking points ready. Okay, so I did prepare some slides, but I can't really access the ability to share them, so I'll just kind of go through it. So what we're looking at, this week I'm going to be presenting on Thursday for the Tradecraft conference. So let me introduce myself first. My name is William. I'm an Indigenous FS and member of Naquaqua First Nation in BC. And I want to tell you about an initiative that I'm really excited about. It's part of the PAFSO Professional Development Committee, and I think it's a really important initiative. Pam earlier today spoke of respect and support, and these values are equally applicable to the initiative that I'll briefly talk about now. The idea is that many current FS have learned about FS careers through connections and mentors already in the Foreign Service. But we suspect that many Indigenous students who could be interested in FS careers may not have had the opportunity to learn about FS careers, and those who are interested in FS careers may benefit from having an FS mentor to help them along the path to FS employment. On Thursday morning, Ottawa time, I will present to you a vision to increase opportunities for Indigenous students. And what better time to work on this kind of initiative than during these times of reconciliation? Everyone can contribute to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and PAFSO is leading a reconciliation initiative in this way. So what does reconciliation mean? It means establishing and maintaining mutually respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada. So what we're looking at here is increased opportunities for Indigenous students to learn about FS careers and mentorship of Indigenous students by FS officers. And just to be clear, this initiative is not for FS who are Indigenous only. This is for everybody. So why should you attend my presentation on Thursday morning? Because you're interested in reconciliation, developing mentorship skills, increasing intercultural competencies, and or you're interested in lending your experience and expertise and advice to the initiative, or working on various parts of the project as a member of a working group to bring this initiative to life. It will include activities of formalizing the various plans for training, mentorship, engagement with Indigenous groups, and more. Basically, we want to tap into the amazing skills of FS to work on this important initiative. So it's on Thursday, October 27th at 7 a.m. EST. So I hope you'll register for this seminar and join me on Thursday to learn more.
Thanks, William. Yes, it's going to be worth getting up early on Thursday morning for those of us in Ottawa to come and talk about this. And I hope that there will be people who'll be interested in coming forward to join the steering group to make this a reality. I know William has done a lot of work in consulting with our Indigenous colleagues through the Indigenous networks at both GAC and IRCC, and with university groups in several places. Our idea is that we want to start off fairly slowly and make sure that what we're doing is welcomed by the community that we're seeking, to provide something for, and not just giving into the temptation that often happens where we do something, because we feel bad. The majority, the settler community feels bad and wants to, jump on something and make ourselves feel better. We want to make sure that what we're doing is really adding something, and that it is something that is welcomed and needed. And I know William has already taken a bunch of steps to make sure that happens, and we're going to be looking at more. I mean, we're moving quite slowly on this. We don't want to rush. We want to make sure that it's built on a solid foundation. So it probably is. It's going to take a bit of time to get to the place where we're actually, the thing is really running. But I think it'll be worth investing in. Does anyone have any questions or comments on William's points or on anything else related to the reports or the professional committee? I'm not seeing any. I'm not seeing any raised hands. So, okay, if that's great, we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is members' business. So are there any questions or motions or business coming that anyone wants to raise that didn't come up under any of the agenda items that you would like to deal with here at the AGM? We haven't received anything from anyone in advance, so but that shouldn't stop you. If you have something, now is the time to bring it forward. So I'm looking, I'm not seeing anything. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, thank you very much. It looks like there's none. So Marty, last slide. So, je vais dire au revoir et merci. And thank you for everybody for coming out. I want to remind you that at 5:45, we are going to start the Randy Orr Memorial Award presentation. So we have a few moments to, we have a little bit more than half an hour to take a break, pour yourself a glass of wine or a drink so you can toast our winners, and come back to celebrate a little bit. So thank you everyone for your time and your attention. And is somebody willing to adjourn the meeting? To move to adjourn the meeting? I see CJ moves to adjourn the meeting, and one other, I can't see who the other.
Second.
Was that William?
That was Paul.
Oh, hi, Paul. Okay,
Paul
thank
seconds.
you. Paul seconds. Thank you very much. Is anyone opposed to adjourning the meeting? I'll do it that way. Nope, I'm not seeing anyone. I would be quite impressed if you were. But I hope to see you all back here in half an hour to celebrate our Randy Orr Memorial winners. And just a little warning for everyone, we are having some outside guests at that part of the meeting. Randy's spouse will be there, as well as Sylvain de Coutray from IRCC, and a good longstanding friend of Randy.